people thought I was exaggerating depression when I was having suicidal thoughts, because on the outside I was so happy and full of life. And so you can never rely on your perspective to know what's fully going on in someone's brain.
Sometimes I just wanna cave and I don't wanna fight. I try and I try and I try and I try and I try. Just hold me, I'm lonely.
My experience with this is being on both sides. One of my best friends was sexually assaulted as a teenager, and in 2013, for months and months and months, she had such intense suicide ideation and was cutting herself and thinking of all these ways to kill herself. And I would be texting her so much and praying so much, and I was just terrified that she would give in and she wouldn't still be alive. And I'm so grateful that 5-6 years later, she's still my best friend and she's still here and she kept holding on. I'm so grateful. All of my guy best friends have had the opposite experience, where they've had a friend or a best friend who has gone through and killed himself. And I've sat with and talked on the phone with some of my closest friends and just been so broken with them as they've tried to process what they'll never be able to process, where one of their loved ones is never going to be alive on earth with them ever again. And it's so permanent and jolting when something like that happens, and everyone asks, what could we have done different? How could we have saved their life? And so because I've had the experience with a mental illness of logically thinking about why it would be better to end my life, and also just having these impulsive suicide ideations, even voices in my head telling me to kill myself, telling me how to kill myself, I think I can help everyone understand how to save more people's lives. I have done so much research into suicide prevention because in 2016, when I was a senior in college, I was absolutely horrified because I was such a happy person, so grateful about my life. I had such close friendships, so many people who loved me, but I was in severe depression. And because I felt so disconnected from the world, there are these things called depersonalization, where it feels like you're not fully in your brain, but it's going on this autopilot and it feels like you're not there at all. And then there's something called derealization, where the world around you, it feels like there's a fog or it's underwater, like everything is so far away and you feel like you're not fully here at all, but almost like in a coma-like state. And because I experienced that for months and months and months and months and tried so many different medicines and they wouldn't work, I remember logically thinking that if this continued, where medicines were not working and I had to constantly exist in this torturous state where I wasn't able to fully be within my brain or within myself, and the world around me didn't feel real, I remember thinking I would want to kill myself because this state of life is so low and I just cannot keep going through this. It's too painful, it's too scary, it just seemed so awful and hopeless. And I think that a lot of times when someone says they can't keep living this way, a lot of times it is not because of any external circumstance in their life, but it's because of what's going on inside their brain that's intangible, that you cannot see or feel. Other times when people are suicidal, their brain is literally lying to them and they fully believe that everyone would be happier and better if they were no longer here. There are people who are parents who the depression will lie to them so much and they'll believe that their kids will be better off if they're not on earth anymore. The best way to prevent suicide if you have suicidal thinking is to tell someone out loud or text one of your friends. Just let anyone know that you're experiencing this. Many teenagers message me and tell me that they have told their parents that they have severe depression and have suicidal thinking, and their parents do not believe them and think they are exaggerating. A similar thing happens when a lot of people will come out as gay or bi or transgender and tell their parents they're experiencing such severe gender dysphoria. They have extreme anxiety towards their body parts and such intense suicidal thinking because they believe they will never be able to be happy living with this anguish of gender dysphoria. And so often when people come out to their friends or family about these issues, people tell them that they are sinning or they are wrong, that what they're experiencing is not real. I get so many messages from people who are gay or bi or trans and grew up in Christian homes, and their parents have been so emotionally abusive and just denying that their experience is real once they've spoken up about it. So my advice for any of you, for every single relationship in your life, if someone tells you that they're struggling with something, that they have depression, or that they're suicidal, or that they are gay, do not invalidate their emotional experience. Instead of immediately sharing your perspective or what you think they're going through, ask questions. Ask questions. And let them talk and explain to you what is going on. I had so many friends when I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder in college who, because I was so happy on the outside and energetic, they thought I was making it up or exaggerating. Even my family, professors, so many people thought I was exaggerating depression when I was having suicidal thoughts, because on the outside I was so happy and full of life. And so when someone is in severe depression, their brain and body goes into an autopilot where their whole personality is faked. And so you can never rely on your perspective to know what's fully going on in someone's brain. So if anyone ever tells you that they're going through a mental illness or have been diagnosed with something or are suicidal, if you're a parent or a friend or a family member, always take that really, really seriously. I get so angry sometimes at parents because I have all these teenagers who need mental health treatment and their parents do not believe it is real. So if anyone in your life tells you that they think they are experiencing some sort of severe mental illness, help them get to treatment and believe them and ask questions and ask questions and ask them what you can do to help them and to love them better through this. And the same thing if someone comes out to you who is gay or bi or who has gender dysphoria. Don't tell them that you think they're making it up or that you think it is a phase. Don't say any of that. Just ask them questions and ask them more questions and listen to their story and empathize with their experience and make them feel loved. There's a girl with gender dysphoria who killed herself and published her suicide note online on Tumblr. All suicides are horrifying, but the reason that this one has always stuck with me is because this teen grew up in the same Protestant church that I grew up in, Churches of Christ. My experience in my church growing up was that it was extremely diminishing of these situations, in that a lot of Christians will not believe someone if they come out as gay or trans. And so this is what she wrote. When I was 14, I learned what transgender meant and cried of happiness. After 10 years of confusion, I finally understood who I was. I immediately told my mom, and she reacted extremely negatively, telling me that it was a phase, that I would never truly be a girl, that God doesn't make mistakes, that I am wrong. If you are reading this, parents, please don't tell this to your kids. Even if you are Christian or are against transgender people, don't ever say that to someone, especially your kid. That won't do anything but make them hate themselves. That's exactly what it did to me. And because her mom responded in such an invalidating way, and instead of hugging her and saying that she loves her unconditionally and thank you so much for sharing this with me, what can I do to get you help? Instead, she says it is a phase and she doesn't believe it. And that if you have gender dysphoria, which is a real medical condition in the DSM, it's a spiritual problem. God doesn't make mistakes. A lot of my audience is Christian, and I receive comments basically every single day of people telling me that my mental illness is demon possession and that I shouldn't take meds, that I should go off meds. I receive comments like that all the time. And if you have a friend who has a mental illness, never ever ever encourage them to go off their meds without consulting with a licensed psychiatrist. Bipolar disorder has a 25% suicide rate, 50% suicide attempt rate, and when we go on medicines, it decreases our suicidal thinking. So many of my friends and people online who follow me encourage me to go off my meds, even tell me I'm a more authentic version of myself off meds, or that they believe I should just change my diet and how I eat. and that will make my bipolar go away. And it's not like that at all. If you have someone who's been diagnosed with a mental illness, they need to be treated by a professional. I'm so sick of mental health being seen as so completely different than physical health. If you had a friend who had cancer, would you encourage them to stop doing chemotherapy? If you have a friend with high blood pressure where they could get a heart attack and die, would you encourage them to go off of that medicine? One of my friends with bipolar, she was dating this guy, and he encouraged her to go off her meds and manipulated her to go off her meds because he believed that he wanted to love her enough to make her depression go away by his love. That's not how mental illness works. Something else, a lot of my friends when I was in severe depression who have been suicidal before were the ones to tell me I could call them at any time, even if it's 3 a.m., 4 a.m., call them and wake them up and talk to them. My guy best friend who I grew up with, who has also been suicidal and who had a friend who killed himself, that's what he told me, that I could call him at any time. And so if you have a friend who is in depression or has suicidal thinking or is cutting themselves, has any of these signs, tell them that you would be so devastated if they killed themselves, that you love them, that you love that they are part of your life, and that if they ever need anything, to please, please, please ask you for help, to wake you up in the middle of the night, and say that consistently to them, that they can wake you up in the middle of the night if they need to talk to someone and are having those thoughts. Knowing that several people in my life, that I could wake them up, that I could call them if I was scared and I felt like I would hurt myself, is so comforting. And also to not be scared to call 911 and go to a psych ward. I've had a couple of times where I've typed in 911, like I thought it was really bad and I was really scared I would hurt myself. I never want to go to a psych ward. I haven't been. I'm lucky I've never had to go before. But just always know that you can call 911 and the hospital will help you get stabilized on meds if it is really, really bad. And I know for me, just being around other people when I was in depression really helped, because I knew if I'm around my friends, I'm not going to do anything to myself. And so if you have a friend who's in depression, just being around them constantly, even though I am half introvert, that was something that was the most comforting for me when I was in severe depression. When I would be making food or studying or cleaning my room, just having someone next there with me was so comforting and made me less scared of the suicidal thoughts. The other thing is, if your friend has a mental illness and is in severe depression, it's going to be so difficult for them to make the calls and to make an appointment and to show up at the appointment. And so help your friend out by making the appointment for them, going to the appointment with them. In depression, you feel like you have no energy. It's so difficult to do tasks and to have motivation just to do basic parts of your life. And so if you have a friend who's in that situation, just help them out by filling out paperwork for them, making phone calls, going to the appointment with them. It could save their life. And if you do have a mental illness, if you have major depressive disorder or bipolar disorder or schizoaffective disorder, being on medication and staying on medication and going to therapy is the most important thing for reducing suicidal thinking and increasing the chance that this illness is not going to take your life. I know that when I am less medicated, that's when I have more suicidal thoughts, when I'm really balanced on medicine, and when the medicine is blocking me from being able to go all the way down into severe depression or up or down into a psychosis state where I'm hearing voices telling me to kill myself. Being on medication will get you out of the depression. There are about 30 different types of antidepressants, and then there's dozens of antipsychotics and mood stabilizer medicines. It might take a long time. It might take months and months or even years, which would be rare, but it could take that long. But there are so many different types of medications, and they can combine medicines together. So even if you're in severe depression and you're trying to get different medicines to work, and it seems like the treatment plan is not working, I promise that if you keep holding on, you keep taking your medicine every day, every night, you keep going back to your psychiatrist and trying again with different medicines, eventually you will find a medication treatment that will get you out of severe depression and prevent you from going so manic. Just objectively, because there are dozens of different medicines, eventually you'll find one that works. Everyone's brain chemistry is so unique. And so that's why the psychiatrist doesn't really have that much to go off of when they choose a medicine to put you on. It's a guessing game. Treatment is a guessing game until we find a medicine that perfectly works with your individual brain chemistry. So please keep going back to treatment. If your psychiatrist or therapist is horrible at their job, you don't feel like they're listening to you, you don't feel like it's helping, go find a new doctor. Change psychiatrists. I've gone to so many horrible psychiatrists and changed until I find one where they're really taking my symptoms seriously, asking detailed questions about how the medicine is working, and just being really serious and understanding how severe and dangerous it is to be bipolar, to have severe depression. So change your doctors, find a better doctor if it's not working, and if you have a friend or a child or a family member who has a mental illness and you feel like their psychiatrist or therapist is not helping, help them to make appointments and to find a new doctor. I still experience suicidal thinking in bipolar. I always will. It's like if you have the flu and you have a high fever, it's the same thing. If you have bipolar, you're going to have suicidal thinking. And there's a really good book about bipolar disorder called Welcome to the Jungle by Hilary Smith. And there was a whole chapter about suicidal thinking that really changed my perspective on it. And she just described how we need to normalize suicidal thinking. Not that it's not a big deal. Obviously, it's terrifying and it's a crisis. And we need to make sure people are getting help and that we're checking in on them and know how they're doing week to week, day to day, so that bipolar does not kill them through getting them to kill themselves. But the book basically said that throughout your life, if you have bipolar disorder or major depressive disorder or gender dysphoria, you're gonna have suicidal thinking throughout your entire life, and it's just something that's going to happen. And so now I still will experience suicidal thinking. For example, anytime I'm at a train track or a subway, my mind thinks, oh, if I jump I could kill myself. Like, my mind just goes to ways I could end my life. That's just how bipolar is. And I'll have voices in my head telling me to kill myself sometimes, and it's just what I have to live with because I am bipolar. Please keep fighting. Please keep staying alive. You have so much love to give to the world. I love you guys so much. I am so proud of you, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.
You make me want